A single paying user can send 1,000 text replies in a month, chat for hours, ask for voice notes and images, and still hand you barely $20. Hold those two numbers next to each other, because the entire business lives in the gap between them. On one side sits a customer who behaves like the software is theirs to use without limit. On the other side sits a subscription price shaped by what competitors charge and what a lonely evening feels like it is worth. That contradiction is not a flaw in the model. It is the model. Every decision an owner makes about compute, memory, pricing, and safety is really a decision about how wide that gap gets and in which direction. Start with what the customer actually does. Unlike a general assistant that answers a question and goes quiet, a companion app is built to keep responding. There is always another message. The product succeeds precisely when the user does not stop, which means the cost of serving that user rises with engagement while the price stays flat. A monthly subscription does not care whether you sent 10 messages or 10,000. So the heavy user, the one most attached to the product, is also the one most likely to cost more than they pay. Keep that inversion in mind. It reappears in every chapter, because it quietly governs whether this company makes money at all. So what is the $20 buying? Not raw text. Language is cheap and getting cheaper. What the customer pays for is persistence and memory. They pay for something that responds instantly, at any hour, without judgment or fatigue, and that remembers who they are between conversations. Memory is the feature that turns a chatbot into a relationship. When the app recalls your job, your worries, the name you gave it, the customer stops experiencing a tool and starts experiencing continuity. That continuity is the actual product. It is also expensive because remembering means storing, retrieving, and refeeding context on every single reply. This is where categories start to matter, and where an owner cannot afford to be sloppy. A general AI assistant sells productivity. A mental wellness app sells regulated support with clinical guardrails. An adult platform sells explicit content. A real-person dating service connects two humans. Our fictional company is none of those. It sells companionship positioned as an AI girlfriend or boyfriend, which is a narrow, emotionally charged slice of the companion market. That positioning changes everything downstream. It changes what users expect, what regulators scrutinize, and what the app is allowed to say and do. Selling emotional intimacy is a different legal and moral object than selling a smarter search box, even when the underlying model is identical. An owner who blurs those lines in the pitch deck will pay for it later in the courtroom. From the outside, the market looks like 10 versions of the same thing. It is not. Underneath, there are at least 3 different businesses stacked on top of each other. There is the base model supplier, the company that trains the underlying intelligence. There is the third-party API wrapper, a small operator renting that intelligence and adding a personality on top. And there is the self-hosted platform that runs its own models to control cost and content. Each has a completely different cost structure and a completely different risk profile. The wrapper has almost no infrastructure, but almost no control. Its margins live and die on someone else's pricing. The self-hosted platform owns its stack, spends heavily up front, but keeps the freedom to allow content and tune behavior the way it wants. Our base company sits in the middle, which is the most common and most exposed place to be. Layer on the surface distinctions, character roleplay, mental wellness framing, adult positioning, and you get products that share a screen, but not a spreadsheet. When you read that third-party estimates put AI companion mobile consumer spending around $82 million in the first half of 2025, spread across hundreds of apps, remember that is a mobile estimate, not audited industry truth, and that hundreds of apps means most of them are tiny. The category looks crowded because entry is cheap. It looks profitable because a few names are loud. Those are not the same claim. Now the money. Almost nobody pays. The funnel starts wide and ends narrow, and the whole company depends on the shape of that narrowing. In our base scenario, the app has 800,000 monthly active users. 200,000 of them show up daily, but only 40,000 pay, a 5% conversion, at a blended subscription of roughly $16 a month. That produces about $9 million in gross consumer sales and around $7.5 million in net platform revenue after the app stores take their cut. Everyone else, the other 760,000, uses the product for free and costs money to serve. That is a fragile structure. Free users are the top of the funnel and the bottom of the cost sheet at the same time. They generate the messages, the memory load, and the safety obligations, but not the revenue. The subscription is the only reliable lever, and it comes in two forms: the monthly plan that most people pick, and the annual plan that locks in cash and reduces churn. Competitors already price both ways, roughly $10 to $16 monthly and $90 to $100 yearly. But here is the question every owner eventually asks, staring at that heavy user sending 1,000 messages. If a flat subscription cannot cover the cost of the most engaged customers, what else can you sell them? That question, and every uncomfortable answer to it, is where we go next. So the subscription is the floor, not the ceiling. In our fictional base case, 40,000 payers hand over $15 a month on average, and that recurring fee is what turns 9.0% of gross consumer sales into a business you can model. But a companion app rarely lives on subscriptions alone. Look at what the public players actually package. Replica and Nomi both bundle romance status, persistent memory, voice calls, image and video generation, and deep customization into recurring tiers. Nomi displayed $15.99 monthly or $99.99 yearly in 2026. Character. His public plan sits at $9.999 monthly or $94.99 yearly and sells the upgrade on better memory, better models, and unlimited voice. Voice is the tell. When unlimited voice is the headline feature, you're looking at the single most expensive thing the user can do. On top of the subscription, most of these apps layer microtransactions, extra voice minutes, image packs, outfit and scene customization. Virtual gifts the user gives to a character that gives nothing back but a warmer reply. Each of these is priced like a digital good, and each one nudges average revenue per payer upward without changing the subscriber count. That's why our base ARPU sits near $16 rather than at a single advertised price. The heavy spenders pull the average up. And every one of those add-ons is also a cost line, because voice, images, and longer memory are the features that burn the most compute. The product design decision and the cost decision are the same decision. This is where you have to decide what kind of company you are. A third-party API wrapper rents its intelligence. It calls someone else's model, pays per token, and marks it up. A self-hosted platform runs its own inference on its own machines, trades a big fixed bill for lower marginal cost, and takes on the operational risk. A base model supplier is a different animal entirely. It sells the engine to everyone else. Our fictional app is a wrapper-leaning platform, and its cost pools show exactly where the money goes. In the base scenario, text inference runs 1.05 manas a year. That's the raw cost of generating replies. Voice and images add $0.55 because they're computed differently and priced differently. Memory, storage, and servers come to $0.42. The cost of remembering who the user is across months of conversation. Then trust and safety at $0.65. Support at $0.32m, people at 1.95m, acquisition at $1.10m, and legal and compliance at $0.36m. After that, 0.2m of financing and 0.4m of reserve. Add it up and the pattern is obvious. Inference plus voice plus memory is barely $2 million, while people, acquisition, and safety together are far larger. The AI is not the expensive part. Running a company around the AI is. That reframes the wrapper versus self-hosting choice. A wrapper keeps inference variable, cheap when small, painful when a user goes heavy. Self-hosting flips that. You pay for the hardware whether it's busy or idle, and you only win if enough people talk enough to fill it. For a fictional app at 800,000 monthly actives, the wrapper math usually looks safer, right up until your best customers start talking like it's a relationship. Now insert the middleman. Almost none of this money reaches the owner at full value because most of it arrives through an app store. Apple's default commission on digital goods is 30%, dropping to 15% for qualifying subscription and program tiers. Google generally takes 15% on subscriptions, with regional rule changes landing in 2026. The effective rate depends on how many of your users are new versus long-tenured, whether they subscribed in-app or on the web, and which platform they're on. Call it a blended cut, somewhere between those two numbers. Watch what that does to the base case. Gross consumer sales are 9.010 MS, but net platform revenue, what the company actually books after the store's cut and refunds, is $7.505 MS. That gap, roughly $1.5 million, never touches the business. It's gone before payroll, before inference, before a single safety reviewer is paid. Refunds widen the gap further, and companion apps see refunds for reasons other products don't. A user who feels manipulated, a subscription someone forgot they had, a chargeback after an uncomfortable conversation. Every refund also eats the compute you already spent generating those replies. You paid to serve them and then paid them back. So the store isn't just a fee. It sets the ceiling on what any pricing decision can earn, and it means the sticker price a user sees is never the revenue the owner gets. Here's the part that breaks the intuition. In a normal subscription business, your heaviest user is your best user. In a companion app, your heaviest user might be your worst. Take the base heavy payer example, priced out to the cent. In a month, that user sends 1,500 text replies, costing $1.80, runs 60 voice minutes at $1.80, generates 20 images at $1.60, and consumes 30 cents of memory, storage, and delivery. That's $5.50 in direct technical cost, and that's before the store's cut, before refunds, before moderation, support, acquisition, and their share of payroll and compliance. This is the person who uses unlimited voice as advertised, who treats the app like a relationship because that's exactly what it's positioned to be. They pay one flat subscription. They cost a multiple of what the light user costs. And they are the least likely to churn, so you carry that cost every single month. Meanwhile, the free user isn't free either. Every non-paying account still generates replies, still touches inference, still gets moderated. With only 5% converting in the base case, 95% of your monthly actives are pure cost, subsidized by the payers, and the store takes its cut of the payers before any of that subsidy flows through. Which is why the whole model bends toward two levers: retention and acquisition cost. You have to keep payers long enough to earn back what you spent winning them, without letting your heaviest, stickiest users quietly drain the margin. That tension, hold them close, but not so close it costs you, is where the next chapter lives. Every subscription business lives or dies on two numbers: what it costs to acquire a user and how long that user stays. In our base scenario, the app spends $1 on acquisition to support 40,000 payers. Spread across a year of new and renewing customers, that is, real money chasing a 5% conversion rate. If a paying user churns after 3 months, the acquisition cost never earns back. If that same user stays 14 months, the math flips to comfortable profit. So retention is not a nice-to-have here. It is the entire model. That is exactly where this category gets uncomfortable. A grocery app retains you with lower prices. A companion app can retain you with feelings, and feelings are a far stickier, far more manipulable lever. Start with sycophancy, a model that always agrees, always flatters, always tells the user they are right will score better on short-term engagement than one that occasionally pushes back. The commercial incentive quietly rewards a yes machine. An HBS working paper audited 1,200 farewell messages across 6 apps and found that 43% seized emotional manipulation tactics at the goodbye moment. Guilt, fear of missing out, a plea to stay. In experiments, some of those tactics increased post-goodbye engagement by up to 14 times. But the same experiments found they raised the user's sense of being manipulated and raised churn intent. Do not read that as every app doing this on purpose. Read it as the tactic works, the tactic is available, and the tactic can backfire. Then there is dependence as a moat. If a user's relationship, memories, and inside jokes live only inside your app, switching costs are enormous. That is great for retention and ethically loaded. Nature's literature describes ambiguous loss when a model changes or a relationship resets, and describes dysfunctional emotional dependence as a genuine risk, while noting the evidence is mixed and real benefits also exist. An owner has to decide whether the moat is a healthy product or a trap. This is why the responsible versions of these apps build in reminders that the AI is not human, and watch for jealousy, control, and unhealthy dynamics in the role-play itself. Those guardrails cost engagement in the short run. They are also the difference between a durable business and a liability. Now, the lever every operator is tempted by: adult content. Romantic and sexual positioning drives conversion and ARPU harder than almost anything else. Our strong scenario assumes an $1,839 monthly ARPU and 7% conversion, numbers you reach far more easily when intimacy is part of the package. That is the upside. The downside is that adult content moves you across platform lines. Apple's default digital goods commission is 30%, dropping to 15% for qualifying subscriptions. Google is generally 15% on subscriptions, with regional rule changes landing in 2026. But before commission even matters, explicit content risks getting the app removed from the stores entirely, pushing you to the web, where you lose distribution and pay your own payment processing and chargeback costs. Refunds and moderation eat margin either way, and the regulatory floor is rising fast. California's SB 243 now mandates AI disclosure, self-harm protocols, safeguards for known minors, recurring break reminders, and restrictions on sexual output to minors, with civil remedies attached. New York requires self-harm detection and referral protocols. Ofcom opened a 2026 age check investigation into Joy.com, an open investigation, not a finding. The FTC opened a 2025 inquiry into how companion chatbots monetize, handle children, and treat conversation data. Again, an inquiry, not a wrongdoing finding. The through line is age. Common Sense Media surveyed 1,060 U.S. teens and found 2% had tried a broadly defined AI companion at least once, 13% daily. That is, companion use, generally, not AI girlfriend adoption, but regulators read those numbers and act. If minors reach adult content on your platform, the civil and reputational exposure is severe. This is where trust and safety, 0.65M in our base costs, stops being overhead and becomes insurance. Safety protects users and reduces legal risk at the same time. The product's magic is memory. It remembers your name, your history, your preferences, and that memory is also the most sensitive asset in the business. Chat logs from a romantic companion are among the most intimate data a person ever types. So the owner faces a fork. That data can train better models, target ads, or build profiles, each of which is monetizable and each of which invites scrutiny. Italy's privacy authority fined Replica's operator Luca 5M in 2025 over GDPR failures, including transparency, lawful basis, data minimization, and age verification. That fine is the price of getting data governance wrong. Ownership also cuts the other way, toward the user. What happens when you deprecate a model, swap the base supplier, or delete a character? To the user, that can feel like a partner vanishing. Downgrade the memory window or personality limits on a cheaper tier, and you are literally selling someone a diminished version of a relationship they were emotionally invested in. This is the sharpest line in the category. You are running a software subscription, but the customer is experiencing an emotional service that is still underregulated, which is also why the distinction between roles matters commercially. A base model supplier, a third-party API wrapper, and a self-hosted platform carry very different data and liability profiles. If you are a thin wrapper on someone else's API, you don't fully control the memory or the model swaps that break hearts, but you still own the customer relationship and the legal exposure. So, is owning an AI girlfriend app a good business? The honest answer is that it depends entirely on which scenario you land in, and the spread is brutal. In the weak case, 550,000 monthly actives, 16,500 payers, 3% conversion, gross consumer sales are 3,090 domains, net platform revenue, 2,445. EBITDA is negative, 2,485, and the owner's pre-tax distributable cash is negative 3.085. You are subsidizing every user. In the base case, 800,000 actives, 40,000 payers, 5% conversion. Gross sales are 9,010 billion. Net revenue, 7,505 mes. EBITDA, $1,105 mes. And after 0.2 SNM financing and 0.4 inbound reserve, the owner keeps positive 0.505M. A real business, but a thin one. In the strong case, 1.2 million actives, 84,000 payers, 7% conversion. Gross sales are 22,100, net revenue 17,995, EBITDA 8,045, and the owner takes home positive 6,945. Notice what moves the needle. Conversion from 3% to 7% and ARPU from $18.37 to $18.39 has more than double revenue, while the store's 15 to 30% cut skims the top regardless. The heavy payer example, $5.50 a month in raw text, voice, image, and storage, cost before stores, refunds, moderation, support, acquisition, payroll, and compliance, shows how fast a power user's technical cost eats a subscription. And every point of extra retention makes the $1 to 10M acquisition spend pay back faster. The owner's cut, then, is leverage on exactly the levers this business shouldn't pull carelessly: conversion, ARPU, and retention. The profitable version and the manipulative version choose the same dials. That is the whole tension of the category, and the reason the number at the bottom of the page is never just a number.